that looks like an absolute disaster. This is probably the smallest library card catalog in the whole world. I found it last year when I was styling a dance studio. They wanted to get rid of it. I wanted something for DIY, and it was a match made in heaven. A card catalog is essentially drawers which has little cards in it. Each book is a card and who the book is issued to and on what date is written on it. The beauty of this cabinet was the outside was plywood and covered with veneer, which was pretty much intact but had a few damages, but the drawers were solid teak wood. I numbered the drawers to make sure that they go back in the same place, and then the first thing was to sand this piece. Now, the idea for this cabinet is that I want to keep most of the brown intact and only add some stencil on top. When I put up stencil projects, everybody tells me our stencils don't come up as good or look as good as yours. So in this video, I'm going to tell you 5 ways you can have good, crisp stencils in every project that you do. Number 1, the consistency of the paint that you use for stencil has to be thick. Don't water down your paint. If you're using acrylic tubes, don't water it down. Use them directly the way they are. Whatever paint that you are using, always use a thick consistency. In case your paint is thin, I would suggest you add a little bit of chalk powder to increase the consistency of it. Here, if you see, I sanded the piece, I cleaned it, and now I'm fixing a little crack in the veneer with little Fevicol and taping it up and keeping it aside probably for an entire day. And then I removed the hardware. I did not want to throw this away because the hardware was pretty good, so I decided to spray paint it. And the knob is actually connected to a long rod to which the cards are punched so that they don't move. This had years of dirt in it. Back to stenciling. The second thing that will help you get better stencils is to use a foam roller. Always have a nice fresh foam roller. Here, if you see, I'm using regular wall paint, good quality emulsion, and I'm not going to thin it down, and I'm going to use a foam roller which is nice and firm and will transfer the paint without any issue onto the piece. Now here I wanted a little border and then the center with the flower. So I've taped the stencil down, and here if you see, I'm not pressing too much, I'm just rolling the paint over. Now this is too tiny a stencil, so I just had to tape it down on one side and hold a finger while I transferred the paint on to the stencil. Don't move around too much. With just one sweep, you have to lift it and expose the design. Number 3 is, if you see any spillovers or any paint transfer on the rest of the outside of the stencil, then always have a wet cloth near you so that you can rub it off. Any spills that you see, if it is completely damaged, then I suggest you wipe off the whole thing before it dries and start all over again. But if you see small spills here and there, use a wet rag and clean it right there and don't wait for it to dry. That way, you know, once you're completely done, your piece will look cleaner and crisper. This stencil was given to me by a colleague in 2021. At that point of time, it was available on Amazon. Unfortunately, I don't see it anywhere. If any of you know where to find this kind of stencil, please let me know so that I can share it with the rest of the world. Here, if you see, I'm trying to have the design continuously. So I'm first lining it with the side and then placing the border on. You'll see when I do the reveal, it'll be it's a very nice little detail, but I feel it really matters a lot. And I'm absolutely in love with this little floral stencil, and I'm looking forward to doing so many more projects with this one single stencil. It's just such a beautiful piece, and it just transfers on so well. So what I did was I did the stencil on the three sides, that is left, right, and the top. I left the back intact. This was the last stencil for the body. I like the little streak of line at the corner, so with my roller I just painted a little streak in the edges. Next, I wanted to do the stencil on the drawers, so I sanded them and then wiped them to reveal the nice grain. The fourth point I wanted to demonstrate at this point of time in the video, because I can tell you that things really went wrong. So I couldn't tape the stencil, so I just held it in place and opened it, and that looks like an absolute disaster. So the fourth point to get nice crisp stencils is always wipe the back of the stencil after 2 or more applications. Otherwise, the paint will bleed through the stencil to the back edges, and when you create the stencil, it's going to give blotchy marks on the stencil, making it look extremely ugly. And with that one, our last drawer was done, and the top finish I'm going to give a coat of clear polish. I loved the brown on this one, and doing the polish makes it really shine. You can actually see the difference now. So I just took some polish on a lint-free cloth and I'm transferring it onto the piece in circular motions. You can already see that the grains are raising and it's already giving that nice rich brown color, and the white stencil on top looks absolutely stunning. Here is a little close-up view. When you DIY, when you decorate, or when you are on to any kind of creative project, you can plan as much as you want. It could look fantastic in your mind, but when you get down and do the work, you could probably take an absolutely different direction. Like here, I spray painted the hardware gold. I wasn't too happy with the gold that was on it once I put on the labels, and then I went in with this antique bronze acrylic color and painted a little bit on top of the hardware. One other thing that I found was something was amiss after I put it together, and then I realized the borders around the drawer may need a little bit of color. So I removed the drawers, scrubbed the polish out, and then painted it white, and then put the drawers back, and then I was satisfied. Yes, now it looks complete. Which brings to the fifth part is, don't be afraid to go back with the brush and make little corrections or little additions with your brush to your stencil. This is how the before looked, and this is how it looks after I painted it. You can see the waterfall border, which is continuous, which I absolutely love, and I think it turned out so beautiful. Every single time I am in the studio and I look at it, I feel so good about it. What do you think? Would you try stenciling something in your home?